You're listening to Just 3 Clicks, and this is episode 19. My name's Joey, and I'm sat with David today. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. It's been a another kind of, well, it's pretty much the same month as it has been for the last 12. I think we've the business is still busy. We're still working pretty hard here, but the outside world's kind of the same. So yeah, it's I think I was chatting to somebody today actually, this morning, and the feeling's kind of like apathetic. Like you don't really feel kind of excitement and things at the minute. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of
yeah.
So I think overall good, but I think good in 2021 and good in 2020, 2019 are very different things.
Yeah. I think it's just like adapting. Do you know what? One thing actually that's pissing me off at the moment is I keep seeing this thing online of it's okay to not be okay. I don't like that. Like I don't think it's okay to not be okay.
What it is, right? I understand, like, I understand the premise behind it, i.e., we're all allowed to feel like things aren't okay, and things don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Or we're allowed to have bad days. Like, that's all fine. But the problem is, it's how people use it, and it's all virtue signaling. It's all, people trying to jump on like the mental health bandwagon, and there's no thought that goes into what it actually means. It's just empty It's empty words. It's like the whole thing, like, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Same thing, but then you've got all the people saying it who are complete douchebags.
Yeah, who are just like absolutely idiots. Yeah.
So like these are the people that will, talk about someone's appearance and shout them down and bully people online without thinking about what they're doing. But then the minute it goes too far and somebody, commits suicide or someone has a bit of a breakdown, they'll backtrack and try and jump on the virtue signaling bandwagon.
I think for me it's just, I don't think as a society we shouldn't become... my fear is that we become that numb to what's happening, that we just basically fall into this complacency of like, well, it is what it is kind of thing. And, we just accept how things are going to be. Like, there's some bizarre... Like yesterday, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but like there's a new law now in the UK that's been passed that if you travel somewhere, let's say I go to Portugal and then I go to France and then I come back to the UK. If I don't say that I've been to Portugal and I lie about it, I could go to jail for 10 years. 10 years. If you're a child molester, you can go to jail for 18 months. Something about that doesn't sit right with me. It's weird.
Well, it's just, yeah.
It's very weird that.
It's the way the world's going, apparently,
My point there is I don't want us as people to think we don't have a right to say things that are not right. Because if I went and said that on LinkedIn, I'd just get bashed for it. Yeah. And that's dangerous, isn't it? That's not good, is it?
No, because what you're saying is probably true. But then someone will... I think the problem is nowadays, I mean, we're going to talk about technology, but let's kind of talk about social media as technology. We've all got opinions. Like, everybody in the world has an opinion. It's how we kind of go about our day-to-day lives, It's how we choose what to do, what car to drive, what job to do. It's all formed based on our opinions and what we think is good and bad and interesting and uninteresting, fair and not fair.
Yeah.
But those opinions are formed by our own experiences. So my opinion and your opinion, it could be very similar, or it could be very, very different. Now, like, I'm drinking some Coke Zero right now. You might say Pepsi is much better, and I might think Coke's much better. Now, does that really matter? Are we going to fall out over that thing? Probably not, because we're face to face, but
Yeah.
online people they take the human aspect away from it, and then they'll just fall out and they'll argue over things that don't really matter, and people get aggressive, people get really passionate about things, and they forget that it's their experience and their views, and not everybody has to agree. And I think I don't understand it. Like I'm open to everybody's opinions, and I kind of don't always make definitive statements because it's my reality. I'm a completely different person to you, different upbringings, different circle of friends. We should be different, but that shouldn't make us dislike each other.
Shouldn't make anybody a douche.
Exactly. Yeah. Just
The problem is online. The problem is, in a way, it's kind of bridging to what this whole episode is about, which is technology. And the problem is technology because it's that easy to just be that person online.
Yeah.
If we were walking down the street and I said it, it would probably be like, "Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
weird."
yeah.
We could have a normal, rational conversation.
I look at me in a car, right? I'm quite a placid person. I'm quite, I don't tend to get angry. Put me in a car, I'm a complete dick. Like, I get aggressive. I shout. I flick the V's at people. Call people wankers. Like,
It's a Leo thing, honestly. Every Leo I know has road rage, and,
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's the
quite
only
funny.
place I get angry, and I don't know what it is. But then some people are like that on social media. Like I know
Yeah.
people, right? I know them as people, and I get on with them, friends, family. I see it on social media, and I'm like, you're a dick.
Different person, yeah.
Like you're not the same person. And I think technology brings us together, i.e., you can connect with anybody in the world at any
Yeah.
given time, but it drives us apart so much as well.
There's a good side and a bad side to
Yeah.
everything, I guess. I just hope that our existence isn't pervaded by the advancement of technology, and a lot of the way things are now, it's becoming pervasive because, okay, let's look at censorship on technology at the moment. So the EU are actually doing a big push for like a new regulation against big technology companies so that there's no bias in technology. Now, I don't know if that's ever going to mean anything because personally, I just don't think that's going to change anything. But, technology has gotten to a stage now where if you say the wrong thing, you're fucked, basically. So we just talked about it this morning. I've forgotten her name now. I'll have a quick Google of it. So it's a Disney star. She's in Mandalorian, if anybody watches that. Gina Carano. Okay, so I'm not saying I agree with what she's saying. I'm not saying I disagree either. But she basically lost her job because she posted something on social media. Like, that's it. So that's her career, like, done.
Yeah.
She got sacked from her career on Mandalorian, so she can't have that show. And she got dropped from her talent agency as well. So she can't go and get another acting position.
But so why did she get dropped? That's because the people she works for or with are afraid of what she said they may get like cancelled as well. That's the new word.
That's cancel culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what the whole argument is about
So
her.
everybody's afraid of being cancelled, pretty much.
Yeah. That's the dark side of technology. That's where we are right now.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, right? Well, it's not funny, but it's kind of ironic, is that there's this talk of the rise of mental health and how we should all respect each other. But the witch hunts online are generally the people who talk about mental health and being kind to everybody. But the minute someone says something they disagree with, they just flip completely. Yeah. And it's not about being kind, it's about ruining someone's life.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think a big part of this, right, comes from labels and self-identity. I've read a little bit into this recently, so it's a bit of a segue, but not really, because it's what technology has allowed us to do. So over the last, let's call it 20 years, like our self-identity has become almost like the forefront of society. So like everyone has to have a label, everybody. If you don't have a label, you're fucking weird, basically. Like, I don't feel I have one, like, but someone will give me one because if I say something, they'll say, "Oh, you're this." I
Yeah,
might be
yeah.
like, "Well, I'm not really. This is just how I think about things." But I have to have a label. Like everybody has to have a label. So online, the issue we get is that people want to wear their labels. So it's like if you are, I don't know, a survivor of, like if you, let's say you've been in rehab, like that's you now, that's your label. Like you've gone through a rehab program, you survived drug abuse and whatever. Now that's your presence online. That's how you're going to talk to people,
Yeah.
defend yourself. LGBT community, great example. I'm not saying any views here, by the way, but I'm just saying as an example, if you belong to the LGBT community, you know, they wear their label. Like, and when they come online, I'm not saying that like everybody a part of that community is this way, but you'll find that their opinions can be really quite strong. Like, and their defensive stance is really strong because of how proudly they wear the label. Technology is what's enabled that. Like, you couldn't do that before. Like, I wouldn't even know if
No,
we were
no.
just walking down the road or if we were at a party or something or a club. It's like, I don't know what your views are. I'm just here to have a good time.
Yeah.
But it's not like that anymore.
No, no. I think as well what technology does is, I think people's self-identity has been eroded away, kind of by technology, but by kind of the world being more open as well. So like when I was brought up, the world. I mean, I'm only 33 years old, but the world was so different when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10
Yeah.
than it is for people who are that age now. Um, there wasn't. I remember kind of there was no. Like I was kind of, I didn't have the internet when I was young. I remember like Microsoft Encyclopedia. That was my way of like finding out things about the world,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you couldn't just Google something. But I think nowadays there's that much information that it, you don't really know who you're meant to be or what views to have, because there's so many different opinions. It's very hard to make up your mind about what you believe, and I think that kind of information overload, it erodes away, what your core values are from being a child, and that I think they're the values that are obviously quite drilled into you. They're they're quite strong because they're from your parents.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the problems now is people trying to find where they belong and what the views are. And as that happens, people gravitate towards something quite strong. And that's where you end up. And then once you say, like there used to be a thing I used to do when I was like starting my business, and I would say things out loud. I would write them down. Because if you write something down, like I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to do these 10 things. It's a to-do list pretty much.
Yeah.
You're more inclined to do them than if it's in your head. Or if you said to somebody, right, if you stood up in a room full of 100 people and said, like, I'm going to lose 5 kilograms in the next 30 days, you're more inclined to do it. And in 30 days, you're going back to that group of people. If you don't do it, you're going to feel pretty bad.
Yeah.
So what's happening now is people are being very open about their views. Think about, like, my parents wouldn't have spoken about politics. They wouldn't have spoken about religion because they got told not to.
Yeah.
That was like, you don't talk about politics and religion. But now everybody does. And because people are so kind of definitive in how they make the statements, like, this is the only thing I believe, I'm not,
Yeah.
you cannot move me because this is my identity. Like, I hate rich people. I hate the system. I hate this. I hate that. Because they say it so openly in a public forum, they then can't be shaken from it. So if you make an argument that is, it's correct, it's balanced, and you're trying to make a not even an, if you're just trying to debate what your views are, but not in an aggressive way, what you get back is aggression. It's no, you're wrong. You're like I've stopped engaging now because all I get is, you're white, you're privileged, you're male, and I'm like, well, that may be the case in your opinion, but
Yeah.
like, it doesn't mean that my opinions are irrelevant. So I just stop engaging because I just feel that I can't. It's not a good use of my energy, and it's probably not the best for my mental well-being. Just kind of sitting and arguing with people all day. So I tend to not engage anymore. And I think what's happening in society, and technology is causing this, is there is a silent majority now who are afraid to talk. If you don't
Yeah.
belong to a minority, in some respects, like you feel like you can't speak, and that's that's how it is.
It is how it is. And the problem is like people rally. So it's like there's a book I'm reading, two great books me and Jamie talked about in the last episode was Brave New World and 1984, right? And in in 1984, Huxley talks about how in a nation, if you have just 20% of people in a country that believe something, it doesn't sound like it's 20% is obviously the minority of people, but Huxley said that 20% of a nation can literally change the entire country because it is a lot of fucking people.
It's noise, isn't it?
Yeah.
20% of people can make more noise than 80% if the 80% are afraid to talk.
If there's 20% of our country right now saying, well, you should have the vaccine if you want to travel, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if 80% are like, do I really need to get a vaccine to travel? But that 80% will look terrible because you've got that other portion that are so strong in their opinion.
There was an experiment, and this probably doesn't kind of tie in completely, but it was a social experiment where they had like a fake waiting room, and they set a fire in like one of the waste bins.
All right.
And it was like, say 10 people sat in a room waiting, and if nobody stood up, then nobody moved. So like there was a fire in a waste bin.
Right.
But if nobody made a move, then everyone just sat there and kind of didn't know what to do.
That's interesting.
If one person gets up, then everybody gets up. So I think it's the same kind of thing. You know, you've got if 20% of people, so 2 in 10, are saying something, you know, a good percentage of the people who aren't saying things will tend to move in that direction just because people are saying it.
Darren Brown did a great experiment. He called it, I think it's called the game show. And what it is it's basically, he's got a crowd full of people in this room and they're watching this screen. On the screen, it's a real person. It's not real. It's all set up because Darren wants to make this point. But there's a character. It's not a character. It's a real person on screen. They've got live cameras everywhere. And Darren says, right, everyone in the audience today is going to control what happens to this guy over the next 60 minutes. Like, you're going to decide, right? So Darren gives them 3 options. He'll say, so the guy walks into a bar and the options are something like the guy will get a girl to buy the guy a drink, or we'll get somebody to bump into the guy, right? And it starts off really gradual with these really minor things. So they start off with, right, let's get him to bump into someone. And then it's like, right, should he start a fight or should he just, kind of walk away and leave the guy alone? And everyone's like, get him to start a fight. So he starts a fight. And literally it starts with just a small group of people wanting to kind of be a collective mob. But by the end of it, the last challenge is basically he's being chased by someone and he's going to get hit by a car. So literally people are persuaded that heavily by everyone's views that they actually choose to see the guy being hit by a car on TV. It's absolutely amazing and then he stops the show and says it's basically fake. That he just wanted to show how mob mentality works and how if people become a collective, even if it's the worst thing ever, generally people will just pull together and be the mob.
Well, what it is because people, you want approval from other people. So if you think something like, and what you think is morally incorrect, but then someone else comes and says, no, you're right because of X, Y, Z, because you want that to happen or you believe in that, you want that positive reinforcement from other people. Once you get it, it doesn't take much persuasion to go and operate that way.
This is the power of online. Like, it's so easy to become a group it's like social media is difficult. Like I was in a debate this morning about how to hire people basically. And the vast majority of people are supporting this person who's saying whatever he's saying. But what he's saying in my view is completely wrong. But I'm being seen as like the Antichrist because my view is completely opposite to what he's saying. My view is not wrong because there is no right and wrong to what he's saying. But I'm just being deemed as wrong because I'm not agreeing with everybody else.
The thing with right and wrong exists for certain things, but then the majority of life, there is no right and wrong. It's like, what drink should I have today?
Yeah.
You know, what diet should I follow? How many calories should I eat? What car should I drive? What house should I buy?
It's just certain
Like,
things don't have
it just
a definitive answer.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Like how wooden is this wood? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I just, but the problem is people feel that, you know, it, because people feel so strongly about other people's actions.
Yeah.
You end up in a position where you can't. We argue about things that kind of don't really matter. Like what you were talking about online. Yeah, everyone can have opinions, but for someone to make a definitive statement about this is the right thing to do, it's. I'm going to make a definitive statement now, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to do things, and it's all based upon your own experience in life, in business, in everything you do, and that's where you build up and make your judgments. And I think that the problem we've got in society now is that we are all different people, we're all different animals, but it's like we've all got to operate in the same way.
That's the problem.
And that is not going to work.
That's not. It doesn't work, but that's the way it's going to be. Well, it might not, but my view is that is the way it's going to be, because it's what's been happening for 50 years.
You can see it on this podcast. We're saying things like, I don't agree with this, or I'm not saying if I agree or disagree, but this is... So you've got to put a disclaimer.
Oh, yeah, 'cause I have to defend myself.
You have to put a disclaimer before everything you say. And that is crazy.
That's censorship. That's control of the freedom of speech. Like, you know, it's mad, because a lot of people will listen and say, well, you know what, I've got my freedom of speech, but we don't really have freedom of speech. When you have someone like Edward Snowden say, he's got this great saying, he says, you know, saying that you don't really care about your freedom of speech or whatever. Well, what he actually says is, if you say that I don't really care about my privacy because, you know, Google's already got all my data and everyone's already got all my data, it's the equivalent of saying I don't care about my freedom of speech because I've got nothing important to say. And it's like, it's such a great point. It's like, we as a society are not making in my view, I don't think we're making a big enough fuss about the liberties that we have as people and the way things are going. And it's very hard, because I think sometimes we just don't see what's happened. But if you look back 30 years or 20 years, life was just so different. Fucking hell, if you look back 12 months, life was so different, because that's how fast the world's changing right now. And I think, you know, we've just got to be open to the idea that, you know, we just need to look at how we're interacting with technology sometimes, because it is a blessing. We've got so many benefits from it. Like, shit, we're a technology company. Yeah. Like, you know.
Well, we wouldn't be on this podcast right now without technology. Yeah. You know, there's how much technology is being utilized right now. You know, you've got the microphones, you've got the recording, the way we're distributing the podcast, you know, how you found the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, the benefit is there, but we've got to understand that it's not all positive. And
no, there's a line. There is a line. There's a great documentary actually called The Creepy Line, and I recommend watching that. It's really good. It's about how technology is changing civilization. So one thing I'd like to kind of talk about is Elon Musk and his advancements in technology, because I think Elon's doing stuff that's really, you can look at it two ways. You can either say, wow, like, that's amazing, or you can look at it and say, how much are we trying to just basically be God? Like, how are we just trying to play? Are we trying to be Mother Nature, basically? So in the last couple of years, they've basically found a way to essentially create a synthetic cell. So the human body is made up of 50 trillion cells. That's how we are. That's what we're made of. And now we have got the ability to create a completely electronic synthetic cell that behaves like a human cell. And it's just created by computer code, which in my head, that's just like, that's not right. For me personally, I just think that's fucking weird. Like, at what point do we get to a stage then that we can then create 50 trillion cells and just make a person? Like, when does that happen?
What if we are that already?
Well, Elon Musk says that, doesn't he? I think he says, you know, games are going to be so realistic in 20 to 30 years where we won't be able to differentiate between are we playing a game or are we in reality? And then he then follows up by saying, how do we know we're not playing one right now? And that's fucking freaky to me, man. And if you look back over historic mythology, religions, a lot of great philosophers of our time have said that we are kind of just living in an illusionary simulation, basically. And this is stuff that's been written over 5,000 years. So there's got to be, I don't know, like I'm always very open-minded to these kinds of things. I think it's interesting.
This is one benefit of technology, is the sharing of knowledge and the ability to acquire it. The danger is the people acquiring the knowledge, utilizing it in the wrong way or using it to back up their own views that may be not right or wrong, but they essentially not being open-minded enough to kind of look at all angles. I think that's the problem with knowledge. It is power, but I think we have access to that much nowadays that it's dangerous to, because you can pretty much use anything to back up your narrative. So like if you're using it just to back up your narrative to make yourself feel better, to gain that mob kind of mentality, I think that's, and to argue, that's wrong in some respects. But like I'm a big believer in just obtaining knowledge and looking at things from different angles. And I think that's one benefit, is if you're open-minded and you can actually be moved in your views, then it's a great place to be right now.
I think we should all have the freedom to find information. And that's the big thing that we've had over the last few months, is this whole suppression of free speech and people not being able to say things, share things. Like there's certain content that's not allowed anymore to be on social media. Whether the content's right or wrong, technology shouldn't step in and be the referee in a way. Like it needs to be a neutral medium that, a person can just decide what they want to do with that information. Like, and I think that's the danger.
Do you think, like, obviously people take offense nowadays quite easily. What do you think drives that, and how do you stop that from happening? Because I think,
like, the whole PC thing.
Yeah, like, because I feel that the entire world's become a lot more sensitive in the last kind of few years, and I'm not saying that it's okay to be offended, but what it's kind of an empty emotion. Like it doesn't really do anything. Like if you offend me, I don't understand what it does. Like you don't know you've offended me because you're probably not set out to do that.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I'm offended, but then what's the action from that thing? Like
nothing. It's just more suppression in my head.
Yeah.
The way I see it is like you're just trying to get people to not have a strong opinion, basically. Like it works both ways. Like, look, like I've got loads of multicultural friends, and I've had jokes made about the color of my skin multiple times by my friends. I don't really care because I just don't. Like it literally does not bother me. Like not even a little, not even 1%, because it's just not who I am. But you couldn't just say that out loud. And I'm not saying we should say it out loud, because obviously there is a sensitivity. But I think my point on that is that we shouldn't be in a situation where we have to pre-think if what you're saying is going to be offensive. Like it's
context as well. Like
exactly, yeah.
Like if one of your friends said something, yeah, and then a complete stranger came up to you in the street and said the same thing.
Yeah.
Like that could be like it's different context. But then what someone can do is take your friend's the context of you and a friend, a private conversation that gets spotted by somebody else, and say that's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it might be, yeah, it could be, but the context is different than someone just saying it in the street that you don't know. So like, it could be anything. I mean, if someone said to me like, "God, you're ugly," and that was a random person, but then one of my mates said, "Mate, you look rough today." It's the same thing.
Yeah, just different context.
It's different context, and I think that's the problem nowadays. Is you can go back on someone's like Twitter feed for 10 years to find out, like, find something they said when the world was a different place, when they were a different person, and you can literally ruin their life because
Kevin
of it.
Hart.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Hart used to make, look, I'm not homophobic. I don't have any problem with homosexual people. But in the 90s, when I grew up as a kid, it was different. It was a completely different era. Now I can't be judged for something I said in the 90s, like, because the era was different. It's like there's been a lot of acceptance about homosexuality in the last decade, but these views weren't shared back then. But Kevin Hart got absolutely ruined because of a joke he had made ages back in his career, like right at the start of his fucking Twitter feed or something. And I just think that's wrong. Like,
Yeah, because people change. Like, everybody is adapting and changing all the time, and you change to your environment. And I think, that's like, I'm a different person than I was in like, a year ago.
A year
Never
ago,
mind 20. Like, I remember some of the things I used to say in school to people, the things we used to, how we describe something. Like, I can't even say it because
yeah. I know what and I know what I already know what you're trying to say,
yeah.
because
So
I would say the same thing.
That was just what we said back then, and we didn't
Yeah.
think anything of it.
It's not that we were like hateful towards any group of people.
No, but
It's just a word.
I know that's what kind of, it was just that era. Now, would I say that nowadays? Like, no, because I've adapted how I am as a person, and I understand that maybe the way I behaved when I was a kid wouldn't be acceptable nowadays, and that
It's balance, isn't it? Though, like, so for instance, that if I think we were talking about what I think you're talking about, like, that has changed, right? And I think that's probably changed for the better. I think that's actually quite a good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, it's like, I don't know, like having to prove that you're not racist before you even say anything.
Yeah.
In my head, that's fucking stupid. Like, and I can say that because I'm brown, but it's just stupid. Like, you don't have to tell me, you don't have to prove to me that you're not racist because I'm not thinking you are.
You don't. Things like being racist or homophobic, actually saying I'm not racist but, or I'm not homophobic but, I'm not homophobic but I just want to make this point, that actually makes you seem like you are. Like you're trying to defend yourself. Now, that's like, it makes you look guilty. But what it is, it's just, I don't want to offend somebody, so I need to put a disclaimer.
I mean, I did it literally a minute ago. I said, I'm not homophobic, but this is what we used to say.
And for me, like, things like that, it's about actions, about how you treat people. Like, it's not about words.
Yeah.
I'm like a big believer in like your own like personal liberty. So like, I don't want to impact anybody's life negatively. I don't set out to do that. I would hope that nobody would set out to impact my life negatively. I think everyone should be able to have their own views, live their own life, be who they want to be, and society shouldn't stop that from happening. I
think
yes, that's just what I believe.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is society and technology don't allow you to do that because people are becoming afraid to be who they really are. And I think with COVID, we can't socialize in the real world. We can't go out with our friends. We can't, meet new people. So it's all on the internet. And I guarantee that people are going to be, when we can eventually go back out, people are going to be a shadow of the former self because they're going to be afraid to because we've been we're so constrained online. People are going to be afraid to be who they really are.
I worry about like the next generation of how their world is going to look. And I mentioned to you the other day, I started watching this show, Brave New World, and I'm watching the show because it's based on the book Brave New World, and I'm quite into that whole thing. And it's just amazing because you can just see that's where the world's going to go because it has to. It can't not, because the whole idea is everyone belongs to everyone, right? That's the whole thesis of the fucking environment that they're in. It's like the world has basically become, it's like a post-apocalyptic world. Everything's fucked. You've still got people that live the old way. So you get people who are like monogamous and, They're not like a part of these all these different communities and things, and they don't identify in all these different ways. There's no pronouns and whatever else. It's just normal. Well, what I think is normal 10 years ago. But in the new world, the brave new world, everybody belongs to everyone. So there's no monogamy. Like, so everybody sleeps with everyone because it's become a sexual preference. So the sexual preference is like, well, you know, I'm allowed to belong to whoever I want to belong to. Like, I don't have to be with one person. Now, if you look at the way the world's going, that's actually becoming a thing. Like, we are becoming conditioned to the idea that we should date more. Like, and we don't have to date exclusively. We can date multiple people all the time. And, you know, the world's changing. Go back 20 years, that would never be the case. It was all about you got to have a committed one-to-one relationship and that's it. But things are changing. It talks about privacy, how there is no privacy. So everybody is basically wearing like this lens in their eye. And that's how you connect to the AI. So the AI basically operates everything. Everyone is connected to the AI. So wherever you go, the AI can look through your eye and see who you're looking at. But then what's really interesting about it is when you look at people, everybody has a little rank next to them. And it goes from like A, B, C, D, E, and it kind of shows you what level everybody is at. So everyone has these rankings and they have to be happy about the rankings. So nobody's upset. Everyone's happy. No one gets angry. No one argues with anyone. No one fights. Everyone's just happy 24/7 all the time, living in this weird fucking we're all in love with each other world, basically. Now that might sound great, but it's not human. It's not really who we are. Like, we have to be able to say things and actually have an emotion. Now, for anybody that's not following what I'm saying, like, I recommend watching the show because it kind of will elaborate on the whole point that we're actually making here, because it's literally what it's about. It's about how people are suppressed and not able to be emotional, basically. You can't have a view, essentially. Even to the point where it's like, if you feel angry because someone's shown that they've got some kind of ego, what happens is it's like one of the characters, he becomes a little bit egotistical whilst he's playing this tennis match. So he has to quickly pop a pill to like level him down. And they call it the levels. They'll say, oh, you need to check your levels. You need to check your levels because you're getting a little bit too emotional, basically. Whether it's a good emotion or a bad emotion, it's just check your levels because it's getting a bit too much. And that's what I feel that people are just becoming. It's like, you know, you can't say too much. You can't be overly emotional. You have to fucking follow one narrative. And if you don't, you're mental, basically. It's really interesting, really fascinating. And I don't think we'll ever get to a stage like that in our lifetime. But it makes me think about my son, Ethan. Like, what about his kids? Like, what kind of world is that going to be? How far will technology have gone?
It's changing so fast.
Yeah.
That's like, if you look at the last 10 years, 20 years, the last 3 years, like, the world's changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think we've evolved over millions of years, and evolution takes time. But the world's changing that quickly. I just don't think we can evolve fast enough, really.
I think one actually really interesting thing is if you look at some of the studies that are coming out and the research from like very authoritative bodies like the World Economic Forum. So the World Economic Forum's job is to basically, they will look at us globally and say, right, this is where we're going. This is what's happening environmentally and, you know, the way the world is going to shape. Now, in 2017, they done a 2030 vision. So they were like, this is what the world will be in 2030, what we predict it will be. And the predictions are nobody will eat meat anymore, which I find quite interesting because it's quite a strong thing over the last decade, like veganism and, you know, like let's eat less meat. And there's a whole thing about that. And I think that could be a thing.
Yeah.
There is no ownership. So you won't own it. What they say in the advert is you won't own anything, but you'll like it and you'll be happy with that. Now, in my current form, there's just no way I'll be happy with that. But my kid might be happy with that.
Yeah.
Because the way the world he's going to grow up in is going to be so different to the one me and you are growing up in.
Yeah.
I find that mind-boggling.
Well, yeah, because from an early age, you basically taught to own things, to buy things, to, you know, to make money, to have a career, and the more money you make, the more things you can own. Now, Is that healthy? Like, who knows? But it's the world we've grown up in. And
I think for me and you, it's hard because the era we've grown up in, it's a transitional era. Like, we've gone from playing fucking Game Boy in 16-bit to then having basic phones to phones that literally we can run our entire business on.
yeah. And I think as well, you can see everybody else as well. So you can find people your age from your area and you can say, you're doing X, Y, Z. I should be doing that. And that goes into ownership. Like, look at people who go on holidays, like they're posting images of like 5-star hotels and beaches and
Yeah.
big houses, and like you can live other people's lives. And I think that makes you want to go and achieve that or have that or own that life. But if we're going to go away from ownership, then yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, I recommend people go and check it out. It's called the 2030 World Forum ad. If you just YouTube that, you'll see what it's about. And it's not the only things they say. There's no privacy, but again, it says that we will like that there's no privacy. Again, I don't see how that's ever going to be me because I'm probably the most private person ever. So I don't know. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. But technology is obviously the driving force behind our entire economy now. And not just economy, but our mental state. Like, literally, our belief systems, our emotions, everything is based on this thing that is attached to our hand 24/7. Well, most of the day, basically.
Is it like 8 hours a day people spend on smartphones?
Maybe. I mean, if you count laptops and TV, then it's probably almost every waking hour of your life. Like, you're just in front of some form of technology, really.
It's funny as well because I think my phone, the battery runs out like very quickly, but it's not. It's because I use it so much.
Yeah.
So back in the day, you'd have like a Nokia 3210. It lasts for like a week, but
Yeah.
hardly use your phone back then. It wasn't like, because all you could do was text people and call people. But nowadays you can connect with people, you can be entertained, you can date people, you can break up with people, you can pretty much do everything on your phone. Like,
You can ask someone to marry
you don't have to connect with people like face to face. You can pretty much connect with the entire world from a device and get everything you need from it. Or so,
It's people doing virtual weddings right now.
Yeah, I was talking to one of our head of partnerships today, and he's going to get a VR headset because apparently at Facebook now they're doing virtual reality meetings. So because obviously Zoom's getting a bit boring, you can actually do a proper VR meeting where you're like face to face with somebody.
Right.
So he was like, "Oh, we should get some VR headsets so we can have
Oh my God.
virtual meetings." And that's kind of, it's crazy. Like,
Such a weird transition right now. It's like we're living in fucking
it's moving too fast. Like,
Star Trek or
and
some shit.
it causes anxiety. It causes people to, this is what causes mental health problems, is because the world's moving that fast that all your belief systems are being yanked away from you and twisted and if you've not got quite a solid foundation, it's not a good place to be.
A lot of our belief system is built from what we see and what we've learned, like our history, for example. Like, I watched this really interesting talk on this woman who was saying so much of our mental stability, right, is based on history, as in way before we were even born, just our natural known history of how we came here, what happened during the wars and everything else. Like, that sits in our brain and gives us this story of where we are now. So it's like, you won't be able to recite it to me, but in your head, you will know that we are here in this time in life because these are all the things that have happened. And that's just what we've been taught. But what's happening right now is that things are changing so dramatically that all the rules that we normally would follow, that we would govern our lives by, just aren't there anymore. They're like non-existent. And that's scary. Like, it's frightening. Like, if you don't get a vaccine, you won't travel. Like, that's it. Like, for someone like me who loves to travel, it's like, fucking hell.
If you don't get a vaccine, you're a bad person.
Basically, yeah. That's how it's positioned.
Yeah, like I saw something recently. There was someone in a supermarket not wearing a mask, and I thought, my initial thought was, well, you should be wearing a mask. But then I thought, do you know what? maybe they've got anxiety, maybe they've got asthma, maybe they've got an issue, and then the thought left my head, and I didn't judge that person because of it. But there was two people behind me, and they were basically they weren't quiet about it, but they were basically complaining about this person and saying it was selfish and that they shouldn't be allowed to do this, and they trying to get people to eject this person from the shop. And I thought, that's crazy. It's crazy that a year ago, if I'd have worn a mask and walked into a shop,
people would look at you and be like, "Oh,"
they would have thought I was going to rob the shop, or be I was a danger.
Or that you were a hypochondriac.
Yeah. Nowadays, if you don't wear it, the same people who would have complained about someone wearing a mask or been afraid of it, now are afraid of somebody not wearing a mask, and that's 1 year, like 1 year of time. And
this is the power of look, conspiracies aside, everything aside, whatever's happening, it's happening, right? But that is the power of propaganda. That's what it does. That's how people are conditioned into being a certain way. Like, whether the narrative is true or not, the narrative is pushed forward by divide and conquer. It's been that way for thousands of years. We divide, we conquer, because you've got two sides that are fighting each other. And if, what Huxley said, 20% of people just agree with the agenda, then everybody has to go that way. It's just how it is.
And technology is making that much easier.
Yeah. You can post about it. Somebody could have taken a picture of that person, put it on Facebook. Oh, look, this guy's not wearing a mask. That gets shared 1,000 times. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that what the takeaway really is just being present and aware of how powerful that thing is. Like, just taking a step back for a minute and just being like, just 10 years ago, like, what was life like 10 years ago? It wasn't bad. There was nothing wrong with life 10 years ago. I'm trying to make a conscious effort of trying to just pull myself back a little bit from being so into fucking technology and just being in it so much, and just trying to find ways just to, be happy with what I've got just as a person.
Yeah.
Like, going for a walk, walking my dogs, like playing with my dogs, playing with my son, like, just normal things.
The title of this podcast, what is it?
I've got 99 problems, but technology ain't one. But actually, yeah, all we've done is say technology is bad, but we are a technology company, so
it's not bad. It's just that it can be utilized in.
It's like a knife,
good and for bad. Yeah,
it's like a knife. Like, you either stab someone or you cut some chicken. Like, it's
you
how
can't
you
even
use
say
it.
Cut some chicken because, a cut.
Oh yeah, sorry to all the vegans that might be offended by my cutting of chicken. That video is really funny, isn't it? The one with a guy who's like offending people and he has to keep apologizing.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nindy, I'll message me about that and I'll send you a link to it. We can leave it in the description. It's quite funny and quite relevant to what we're saying. But now, all right, cool. Well, that's quite a long podcast. It's been on for 50 minutes. Anything you want to say? Like, that's the podcast is, we have talked about technology. That's basically what it's about. We never stay fully on topic anyway, but I think that was quite a good job. Anything you want to add, like, on the topic of just advancement of technology, things about that?
I think it's just always understanding that technology is good and bad, and it can be used in good and bad ways. And I think what I always try to do is, it's kind of, would I, especially with how I am and how I interact with technology, is would I be different if I was face to face? And if the answer is yes, then I like to change my behavior. And that's, I think if I find myself straying from who I am at my core, because there's essentially a protective kind of element of, I'm anonymous online. If I change, then, I try and pull myself back. And I think if everybody did that, I think there'd be less conflict, less arguments, and more collaboration, more, more kind of working with each other to push forward. And that's it. I mean, use technology to bring people together and not be divided. And I think you can go into. I mean, we could talk about technology for an entire probably year, because we've not even spoken about things like deep fakes and all that kind of thing, like where technology is going there and how scary that could be, but how amazing it could be too. And I just think you've got to just check how you engage with technology and how you use it and how other people use it and how you're kind of, I don't know, how you're influenced by it. I think you've just got to be aware of it. It's got to be an awareness you have to make sure you don't it doesn't impact you in a negative way.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add there is just, you talked about how if you were walking down the street, how would you talk to someone in person? And I think if you imagine, right, the difference between being online and offline is like when you're online, there's this big thing of the ego. Like I think everybody carries this ego online. And the reason is because that other people are watching. So like if you comment something, that there's like 20, 30, 40, maybe thousands if you're an influencer or whatever that are watching what you're saying. So if you're being attacked, those people are going to rally with you. And if you say the right thing, again, they'll rally with you. Now, if you're walking in the street, the equivalent is I'm walking down the street and I've got my posse behind me. Like I've got 20 people behind me that are like, yeah, Joey, you're the man. And then I'm basically just going past someone and saying, you know what, mate, your opinion is shit. What do you think, guys? What do you guys think behind me? Do you think his opinion shit? Yeah, your opinion shit. That's literally how stupid it is.
I was about to make the same point. How, like, online you can pick and choose your friends. So you can say, right, I'm going to hang around in this area.
Yeah.
And everybody does it. Like, you've got bars that play rock music, bars that play hip hop music, bars that play, jazz. So I can go to a jazz bar and hang around with people who are interested in jazz music. Yeah. So we're all into the same thing, but that's it's the same thing online. I can go into kind of a subreddit on jazz and hang out with people who are interested in jazz. But what's happening in the world is when you kind of bring that into a social platform like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, where you can then take jazz out and put it into the bigger ecosystem. Those people can then kind of go into a hip hop bar and say, this is shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of what's happening is you're not going to hang out in a place with like-minded people. You're taking your group of people to other areas and other bars and telling them they're wrong or they're what they believe is shit, basically.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Like, go and hang out with your friends. Go and hang out with people who share your opinions and talk about it. But don't go and rain on other people's parades, because it makes you feel better about yourself.
Yeah. It's just the ego thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is. I mean, we should all be allowed to be interested in what we're interested in and have our own views, and we should all try and collaborate and mold our views to make the world better, rather than all believe the same thing or get told you're wrong.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Obviously, quite deep. But yeah, if you liked it, leave a comment, share it, and make sure you leave a review as well. So click through to the iTunes and drop us some reviews on that. We do like to see that. So cool. We'll see you in the next episode.